Dental Marketing Theory is turning 4, and we got a special episode for you. I can't believe that we've been doing this every single week for the last 4 years, and I've gotten to talk and meet to some of the best dental marketing and dental growth minds in the world. And that's super exciting. And we're going to be sharing some of the top episodes. You'll really enjoy these. You'll hear from people like Scott Luna and several others who just really understand what it takes to grow in the dental industry. And I want to say a big thanks to our audience. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. That's why we keep making these, and we'll continue to make them as long as you want to listen to them. And lastly, I want to thank the team at SMC. Eve and her whole department just do an amazing job and making sure that these podcasts drop every single week. They're pretty, they're easy to listen to, easy to find, and they just do a wonderful job. And I really appreciate you guys and value you so much. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of the episode. Walk me through that from your point of view, and use yourself, Loren, as like the template. Because there's whole like Facebook groups around this, right? Like there's groups on Facebook with thousands of people in them that have this conversation every single day. So walk me through your background, how you got into hygiene, and then how you've come to break those myths.
So I have been in dentistry for 12 years. I was an assistant first. I did general dentistry for a little while, but honestly, I was pretty bored in it. And so I went into surgery, and I did surgery for a while, and I loved it. But I wanted autonomy with my patients. I wanted to be the one taking care of my patients. So I decided to go to dental hygiene school. It actually took me 2 tries to get in. It was very competitive. I am terrible at standardized test taking. I hate them. But I finally got in on the second try, and that was in San Diego. So I am licensed in 6 states actively. 2 of them are no longer actively. So in total, that would be 8. And the most recent one is Florida. But just to give you a prime example of how this is not true, I am sitting in Seattle right now, and I live in Miami. So I'm here right now working because the market in Miami is so oversaturated. It is terrifying. I had no idea how bad it was before I moved there. When I was looking, I saw jobs that were $70 an hour, obviously shifts, but what I didn't realize were those are all northern Florida, not southern Florida.
Sorry for interrupting the show, but I got something special for you. So we only got 27 more seats at our in-person event. We're going to be helping you grow in 2026. We're going to be putting together a growth map for you, helping you with attracting the right kind of team members, attracting the right kind of patients, and getting your systems in place for next year so you can actually grow. Now, this event is normally $499, but I have a discount code down below for $199. Make sure you sign up right away. There's only a few seats left. We look forward to seeing you soon. Now back to the show.
So in southern Florida, there's no jobs.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
And they're paying $35 an hour for a hygienist. So even if you find a job.
And it's more expensive down there in southern Florida too,
yes.
Right?
I mean, the one thing I will say is gas is cheaper. Everything else is the same as the rest of the country. So, I mean, you don't have income tax, but they don't have income tax here in Washington. And we make $94 an hour here an hour. So it's you can go work anywhere.
Did you fly across the country to do you're being a hygienist in Washington right now? Is that right?
Yes.
Or what are you doing there exactly?
Yes. So if I move to a state and it's just not what I thought it was going to be, I've lived in 8 states in the last 10 years. I've been in dentistry in all of them. And if I get to a state and it's just not what I thought it was going to be, money's not what I thought it was going to be, there's no jobs, any of the variables that could possibly happen, I know in the back of my brain, I always have another state to go fly to if I want to make money. And as long as I have friends in that state or, can find a cheap Airbnb, then I'm only really losing money on the flight. And if you book it enough in advance, you're still not losing that much. So what I do is I reach out to my network or one of the temping apps before I get there, and I make sure that I have scheduled shifts and they're ready to go before I book the flight. So what I did here, I got here last Tuesday. Today is Monday. I'll be here until the 6th. And I'm working Tuesday through Friday this week, Tuesday through Friday next week at $94 an hour. So I'm here just doing hygiene to make money so that I can go back to Miami and pay all of my bills.
So you could probably end up working less and making way more. So you're making, if it's $30, $40 an hour in Miami, you're making twice as much in Seattle. I would love to hear from you. How does a gaslighting typically show up in a dental office setting?
Yeah, it's huge. And this is something, and the reason I asked Jennifer to be on this is because it was something that I definitely was not aware of that was being done to me a lot of times in the practice. But, generally we talked about kind of before the show is generally this is showing up with your high performers, right? And whether that comes from them thinking they can get away with things, thinking that they're just more motivated, or it's coming from the leadership team not cracking down, quite frankly, on the high performers because they're afraid of, what might happen. Ruffling the feathers of a high performer might kind of, maybe they're not performing as well as much. But this really shows up, and I really notice it is with our doctors that we have, and we have had some gaslighting issues with our doctors. We have one in particular right now that is a continual serial gaslighter, and he's a very high performer. But where this really turns in is a lot of deflection. Anytime you come and you bring some opportunities for improvement or some criticism, some constructive criticism, it's always deflecting. It's always deflecting. Meaning, well, so-and-so did that. So-and-so did this. It's never their fault. That's a big one of that. This comes from end runs, which is a new term to me probably 5 or 10 years ago. And I didn't really even understand kind of what that meant. But essentially what it is if you don't get the answer you want from daddy, go ask mommy. And that happens a ton, especially kind of in a group setting where we do have kind of multiple, pillars of leadership in our practice, things like that, including the doctors. But the overall, I think, sign of a gaslighter is really something that one of my mentors has kind of highlighted a little bit and put a term to it, but is they're more interested in being right than they are being effective. And that is something that is that's their call sign. And whether they know they're doing it or not, it's time and time again, almost every situation, that's kind of what happens. So Jennifer, do you have anything to kind of color?
Yeah, I would love to know, Jennifer, it sounds like you had to kind of open the eyes of other people that this was going on so that you could get your job done. Is that accurate? Like you weren't being able to be effective because you might be bringing something up and they're saying, no, it's your fault or their fault. And then you had to first bring the problem to light and then you could solve it. So I'd like to first talk about how did you get everybody on the same page that this is going on in their office? Yeah,
it starts when there's a discrepancy in a situation. And usually one of the outliers is this one person, right? When all of a sudden it turns into, okay, this person saw XYZ. Someone else, well, now we talked about it, but now it's been turned into something that's different. Gaslighters usually are master manipulators. And all of a sudden you start to see team members start to turn against each other because there is this issue. And the recurring theme in all of these issues is this one person. And, this has happened with Dr. Ericson and I, where, we're having leadership conversations and he has one version of the story. I have another version of the story or the facts of the story. And we're trying to sift out what the truth is. And it's incredibly damaging because all of a sudden you have people on opposite sides of the spectrum and all of a sudden everyone is upset at each other and not the person that actually is the source of the problem.
Got it. And then, so how did you bring that to light? Because you see it, right? So you can, if you're paying attention, you can catch those kind of things, especially if you see them do it 7 times, 10 times in a row, right? Where it's like, oh, this problem got turned back around. So how did you first bring it to light? Hey, this is actually what's going on. How do you even because this is a tough conversation to have.
It's a tough one. It's definitely a tough one. And, with Dr. Ericson and I specifically with our doctors, where this has come up first and foremost is if there's a clinical case, if there's a question about a clinical case or how a case went, actually having to plead my case and prove it to Dr. Ericson, hey, this is the chain of events and this doctor is telling you something different, or we're trying to bring up a coaching opportunity and, bleeding hearts of the world unite. A lot of times they come from a place where I really care about this. I do want to be better. I want this. And again, they're manipulating the situation. So automatically going, well, they're doing the best that they can. And the team and I are over here going, excuse me, that's not the way that situation went down.
Oh, okay. So let's talk, unpackage that a little bit because we all know what dentists feel, right? Like dentists are, and you're a dentist, just for the audience. So this is not just some salesperson that's saying these things to you. This is somebody who practices. So dentists feel bad because anytime if you're flying on a plane and someone goes, what do? And you go, I'm a dentist. What's the first thing they say? I hate the dentist, right?
Yeah.
And people are scared of the dentist. That's number one. Then number two, dentistry is expensive. Like, I know this is like an ignored topic, but dentistry is not a cheap thing. So I love the way you frame that of like, I'm trying to help you avoid more dental work. But how, let's be honest, like how can an office practically sell aligners when they can barely sell, fillings and things, crowns and things like that, right? Like how do you help with that? How do you help these offices with that?
Well, it's such a good question because there's two real parts to this. The first thing is, why does everyone hate the dentist? Because they think that we're trying to scam them, right? And I thought when I graduated and I started practicing in New York City, I was like, I'm just here to help people. Like, no one's ever going to not trust me. And then reality hit, and it didn't matter how good my intentions were. Everyone thought I was trying to scam them or price gouge them or whatever. And then I realized the fundamental truth, which is that healthcare providers, we think that we're above business people in a lot of ways, which means that a lot of times we don't study business, right? We're healthcare providers. We don't need all these skills. But the reality is we don't have sales skills. And if you don't have sales skills, fundamentally, you come off as salesy because you don't actually know how to sell. And that's the ironic thing here. So the first thing here is that dentists need to learn how to communicate the value of treatment so that they can properly explain it to them, convey patients of the value, influence them, and convince them to start treatment. That's number one. Number two, you ask, how could they sell Invisalign if they can't even sell fillings? Well, first of all, patients don't want fillings. We are selling dental work that people don't want. And it's kind of like going to a cancer doctor and you keep getting your skin cancer removed. And if they keep coming back to you and you're like, I'm going to take care of you, I'm going to take care of you, you're not really taking care of them. You're just treating the disease. And so if what we actually did was put their teeth into a preventative bite, what we call a protective bite, then what's going to happen is you're going to become your patient's hero because one, you can properly explain it to them. Two, you can give them the highest quality care, clear aligner therapy in a way that fixes their bite so that they stop getting dental work. And if you know how to explain that and you have the system to do it well, you're basically the best kind of dentist.
And then do you help them with that? Or how does your service help these offices with this?
Yeah. So some quick background. I'm an orthodontist by trade. I used to practice in New York City for a couple of years, and I was lucky enough to specialize in Invisalign. And when I say Invisalign, I mean clear aligners. I'm not paid by Invisalign, nothing like that. I use Invisalign because I get the best outcomes for my patients in the fastest amount of time, so that it's best for my patients because they're out of treatment faster, but it's also more profitable as a dental practice. But what I found is that when I was practicing, even though I specialized in clear aligners using Invisalign, it was still unprofitable for me. I was still barely making money because now I know the concept of hidden costs, which is the time, effort, and sacrifice that it takes to give a service. It's not like we're just selling a subscription fee online and we're just collecting money. Invisalign, the truth is that the average GP spends 10 hours per Invisalign patient. So when you break it down by chair time hour, or let's say you're starting 20 cases a year, that's actually an average of 14% of your average working hours, making $178 on average per chair time hour, which is like nothing.
I'd say that, man, I think there's probably, it's kind of a two-part question. So for the first obvious answer, if you're not a good leader, you're not going to get any of this done. If you can't effectively lead your team.
Well, there's 67% of the dental industry right there. You guys can all tune out now and all right, now speak to everybody else.
Right. So if you can't effectively lead your team, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not at all. My wife's not perfect either. But if you can't effectively lead your team to say, hey, this is what we're doing now, and this is what I want you to do, and not dictate, but just lead them through that process and give them the resources and the ability to take responsibility, then you're not going to be able to do it.
Okay, so who's actually leading the office? Is it you or your wife?
Both.
Together. So like you're like co-CEOs, you would say?
Yeah. I mean, she runs more of the clinical side. Okay. I run more of the system side, and to make sure everything runs. So
you're the COO and she's the CFO. Yeah. Okay. And then you're making joint. Yeah. Okay. So what would you say to a doctor that's trying to do both I'm just going to make a wild guess here. Your wife's probably more clinically inclined, and you're more operation and systems inclined, and you happen to be married, so you don't have to worry about like power trips or, you know what I mean, any of those kind of things. Most of the clients that you're working with probably don't have this situation, unless it's like there was a big time in dental where it was a lot of like husbands were the dentist, and the wife was running the office. But that I've seen that more times than not turn into disaster where it just is misalignment. I'm not saying that people can't do it, because I have seen people do it, but I've just seen a lot of people mess that up. So let's assume that the bulk of people listening to this don't have your situation. Walk me through that side of it. How are they handling that? Because they're probably going to have, your role is probably going to have to be the office manager, right?
Yeah, it would. And this is where most of my clients land. They don't have an office manager, right? But I figure out a way to automate and delegate as much as possible. So there's a system that I use and kind of a framework that I use to really sit them down, and I have them write down every single thing that they do every 15 minutes. And they can do it for however long, but I want to see if they're numbing patients, if they're scanning patients, if they're doing impressions, if they're doing x-rays. Like, I want to see every single thing that they're doing in addition to drilling. And then I want to have them star everything that does not require their license. And then I show them and help them process that delegation.
Yeah, that's so good. So what I've noticed in the dental industry is that the dentist will allow somebody who's making $80 an hour, $100 an hour, with some, crazy amount of money per hour, do a minimum wage task, like filling in a spreadsheet and things like that. And it's just because of peer, oh, you're here to just do it. You fill in the report. And then I'm like, hey, what are you working on? And they're like, oh, I'm filling in this spreadsheet that you sent me for marketing. I'm like, dude, you're the treatment coordinator. You're the office manager. You shouldn't be doing that. You make way too much money to do that. You're literally burning money, because we could hire a high school kid to do that. You know what I mean? For minimum wage. Nothing against high school kids, but it was like anybody could do that job. You should be focusing on revenue generating things. And it's interesting because in the business world, non-dental, we do a similar thing with time management, but we don't have them market clinical license versus non. We have a market, was that a strategic task that you're working on? Was that an administrative task? Because then we can start to bucket where their time's going and where to free them up. I absolutely love that approach.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, most people, I mean, let's be honest, doctors are control freaks. Okay. I said
You
that.
said
okay.
it, yes. But I didn't disagree. They're perfectionists.
No, they're control.
They're perfectionists is what it is. It's not, I don't think a lot of dentists want to be controlled just to control. They're perfectionists.
No.
And they want a perfect outcome.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't believe that somebody will do what they will do. And they don't. They won't. And that's fine. But you've got to be okay with 80%. Yeah. So yeah. And that's the thing. It's like you've got to be able to delegate, because so many doctors that I talk to are in that position of one practice, maybe a team of 5 to 10, maybe 15, depending on how big they are. And so they've got to learn how to effectively delegate and be okay with leading their team in the way that they need to, so they can focus on the dentistry.
Yeah, because they're the only. Because
my goal was.
Because they're in the way, and just to help some dentists that are listening to this, you're the only one that can do the dentistry, right? Like no one else can do it in your office. So we have to delegate as much time to that as possible. And just so you know too about the 80-20 rule is that you need to be okay with people doing it at 80%. All entrepreneurs go through that, and all businesses. No one's going to work as hard as me in my company as me, period. And that's always going to be the case forever inside of my company. And I used to not understand that. And I'm like, why is everybody lazy? And it's like, they're not lazy, bro. They're just, you have a vested interest. You have a high upside opportunity and other people don't. So they're not going to work as hard as you. And it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So then I had to lower the bar of what it was acceptable in my brain. That helped me interact with people. Dentists have to do the same thing. You have to lower the bar. They don't see the world in the way that you see the world. And then that frees you up to then go do the thing that only you can do as a dentist?
So in this story, so far, when I built the next 8, the tipping point was I realized I had to create success no matter who the dentist was. So can we answer phones in a way that we get more new patients, no matter who the dentist is? Can we have a different set of payment options or a different form that we get more accepted dentistry, no matter who the dentist is? That's really kind of a operational strategy change, right? Can I perfect my product and my operations to have more success? And I've had those tipping points. I've also had the other kind of side of this coin, tipping points that says we're chasing a big vision, a big dream. We invested heavily in infrastructure, in people, and we find ourselves caught with our, with expenses that are too high to maintain, where you kind of get drunk on this vision of success and this excitement you have to change the world, and you justify saying yes to spending money based on that vision, only to realize you're running out of money and your vision isn't growing as fast as it could have in your, as you thought it would. And so there's those tipping points as well, where you have to make difficult pivots, cost cuts. You have to cut away people costs and business lines to kind of right side up this whole organization to be healthy again. And it's almost like you mourn, the loss of the company you thought you were going to build when you go through that process, only to come out of that forest fire much stronger, much cleaner. There's those tipping points as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a question in a different way, and I'd love your thoughts on this. When did you feel like you made it? Like you were like, oh, this is the feeling that I wanted, that I've been chasing? Because obviously when you started, you didn't get to taste that at first because you got hurt. So you were like, okay, complete change. Then you sold it, and that was probably like a good point. But obviously you were like still hungry for more. But then there were some learnings in there. And then you've had business relationships and things like that. Have you ever gotten to that place, or how do you think through that?
I don't think I've ever gotten to the place that maybe it sounds like you're describing, like I've made it. It's really kind of for me, and maybe it sounds very cliche, but it's how I think. It's kind of this big journey, and I'm enjoying the journey, and that's maybe the closest thing to me saying I made it, is when I look and say, I'm really liking this journey. Let's see, the journey has pain too. But there's so much good that comes. The pain is just like boundaries. When you hit the pain, you realize you've crossed a boundary in a way. And it's like money. Yeah, when you see a whole lot of zeros on your bank account, that's a moment where that's a wow moment. But it doesn't last very long. And yes, you can increase your lifestyle. You can buy a bigger house and go on more vacations, but that doesn't really add much to your life. There are freedoms, of course. There are pain points solved by money. So I don't want to downplay it. There's definitely a leveling up of happiness that happens when you can financially get rid of pain points. That definitely happens. But there's a point of diminishing returns with that money, that extra money.
Yeah.
I've realized that life is about something other than money. And the more I focus on that, the more I feel like I'm making it.
Yeah. So I share a very similar mindset of like goals and KPIs and things that we're setting out to do. We have all of those, but I want to enjoy the in between those, because if I'm only enjoying when I get to those, what I've come to realize, I just create new ones. And it doesn't matter. I've exceeded all my goals that I originally set out to hit. So now I'm kind of playing with house money, and it's just like, how do I actually enjoy this? And I 100% agree with you. It's the journey. Did you have a time when that flipped in your brain where it was like, okay, I need to stop chasing and enjoy the journey? Or have you always felt that way?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, some of those times is when things break outside of the business, when you have relationship or health, things that break. Those are reminders that the business is stealing away the what life should be about. And that opens my eyes at times. I find life kind of funny. there's all these like ironic moments. You think if you put more time and effort into your career, you'd be more successful. But I found the opposite is true. I found that when you open yourself up more to your career just takes more of you. And you end up saying yes to things that aren't as smart to say yes to. You end up making the decision to work more days, see more patients, take more insurances, have more staff, like bigger, but your profit's not bigger and your life's not bigger.
The good thing about social media is you can go viral. And viral is good because you get a lot of eyeballs on you. But the bad thing about social media is you can go viral. and that virality can get your business shut down, or people are like, we're not ever coming to your business again because your front desk person believes X and said it, right? Whatever that may be. How do you control that? Or like, how do you, because that's scary. That can be scary.
Yes. And luckily we learned that lesson early when we only had a few practices. So I respect that very much. So what we did was, one of the things we created was an intranet. We call it Rodeo Mix. And it looks and feels like a standard like Facebook page almost. And all the offices can post their content in there. And so what we do is every month we're looking at what's coming in through Rodeo Mix. And it goes there first. Yes. And we'll then distribute it out to make sure. And over time, the team's gotten so much better at it. You know, the first stuff that was coming in, it was like the photo was you're like, or they would send you 1,000 photos and you had to go in. And over time, what they've gotten better at is, hey, highlighting the best stuff. But yes, we have a way to distribute it before it goes out. So you can, and by the way, before we had Rodeo Mix, here's another tip for you, for our teams out there. You might say, well, Doc, I don't have time to go create an internet. We just created an email and it was just life@rodeodental.com. And so everybody could submit their content to that email to life@rodeo. And then my team would then go in and we'd cultivate, and you put your practice name at the top and then what it is. And that's another way that's a really simple, quick to kick off way to get the content engine going.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's a ton of ways you could do it, right? If you have, you could do a Facebook group that's private with just your offices. You could even, if you're a single practice, just do a text feed. Say, hey, all the people, we're going to do a contest today. Submit all your videos here on this private text feed. And that also helps you, even if your team's super safe and not saying the wrong things or doing things that are going to get you canceled, you still have HIPAA. You have all these other things that you got to worry about as well.
I'm so glad you brought that up. And we actually have a part of our policy in our patient forms. When they start with us, there's a whole HIPAA policy around social media and all those things. And they get to check the box if they want to be a part of it or not. Most taxi patients do, and they accept, but you do get some that don't. And that's absolutely their right. And so you must have that. I would highly make sure you recommend that they have something in place documentation-wise to protect that.
I love that. So everybody, when you come in as a new patient, you're filling out the form and it forces you to say yes or no on that question. It's not just a disclaimer in there, right? That's smart, because then if they hit no, it's like, okay, they hit no, and then you just have to be careful. The office has to be careful. But if they say yes, then it's like, okay, pretty much everything's fair game at that point.
And they love it because when they say yes, most of them get excited, if let's say we do something for somebody getting their braces removed and the celebration. Well, that patient shares that with all of their friends in their network, right? And now you're getting organic drive from just the content that you're generating that's getting extra legs on it.
That's so awesome. I love that. Okay. So now that you have this machine, right? So you invest in marketing, especially when it's branding. So a lot of what we're talking about today is like branding stuff. So branding's great. It's exciting. It's the marketing that everybody loves, but it's one of the hardest things to track on, like, is it working, right? Because you measure eyeballs and attention, but those eyeballs and attention may or may not turn into customers. I've had stuff go viral. I have videos that have gotten 8 million, 10 million views, but did nothing. Like it wasn't even in dental. So it was about AI. Right. It was about like AI and stuff, and not even AI dental stuff. It was just AI in general. And so it was great, but it didn't move the needle for my business. I've had other things that had 500 views that sent me, dozens and dozens of customers that were very impactful. So how do you How do you measure that? Because you're a little bit later stage of the game now. How do you kind of think through that, and has that changed over time?
Yeah, and this is something, look, even in today's environment, as we've grown, we're trying to tackle. So yes, how we convert, absolutely agree with you. This is a call out. You can have the best content in the world, and it's still not actually converting to appointments or people showing up and sitting in the chair. So what I would say is, one, you have to have a frictionless patient journey and a very clear action to what they're going to do as a result of the content. For example, defining what the content is first and foremost. Some stuff's just going to be for social media and awareness, and it's just there. It's silly, it's educational, whatever, and it's not going to drive anything. Except then you are going to have stuff that's intentional on paid social, paid search, that is going to ask for an action, which is to book an appointment or book a call, one of those two, and you need to be able to track those. And so that way, with the dollars you're spending, you can track it all the way down to the phone call or the appointment. And so even right now, we're looking at restructuring our whole patient journey online to make it more frictionless and ease of use, so that with 2 buttons, you got an appointment and you're ready to go. And that's hard in today's world. Even then you add in like all the Google algorithm changes and how they can affect the website, and consistently studying that. I think you got to be on your toes at all times.
So I love this topic because the whole idea of just making more by working less is very counterintuitive, but it's about, they teach you this, you hear this early on in business, is like work smarter, not harder. Right. And in dentistry, it's super confusing. Right. It's really, and it can be confusing in any business, really. Like, are you focusing on the high value activities inside of your business that's going to be the best to produce whatever you want to produce, right? More money or more time or whatever that is. How do you work through that with dentists when you are consulting with them, when you're working with their team? So we're really talking about getting their teams to run the practice for you, but you're also throwing in that caveat of like working less and making more. How can you marry those two together? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so working less and making more, we're taught that. We're taught that work smarter, not harder, like you mentioned. But a lot of dentists, we say, well, smarter, not harder. What does that mean? That means more efficiency in my procedures. What can I do at my practice that nobody else can do? And we immediately go, oh yeah, it's the dentistry. I'm the only one that can provide the dentistry. But what we don't realize is that the team requires a leader. They require somebody to project the vision, to take the practice somewhere. It's not about controlling people, but it's about inspiring and influencing people to go to a higher level and improve upon itself. So I would say the only thing the owner can do that no one else can do is lead the team. So what I have to do when I'm working with clients is help them realize that I know you think you're so valuable cutting crowns and doing fillings, and you think, well, if only I could cut more crowns and do more fillings, I could make more money. So I'll open more days. I'll stay later. I'll come in earlier. And what I want to convince people is if we can get all of the systems in our practice efficient, and we can get them documented, and we can make sure we get agreement from the team that we're all following it, things start to just improve and become like more profitable as is. But then if we prioritize then the time spent to manage, to work with our team, to have meetings and communication, and to train our teams to a standard that we create, we can take our practice to a whole nother level that gives us this freedom of time that so many people want. And if you think about the things you do at your practice or in any job, the things that you do really well, they tend to be things that you enjoy doing. But dental owners probably spend 70% of their time doing stuff they don't enjoy. And I give this example from recent. I had an expense report that I used to have to give to, we partnered up with a DSO, and they had this expense report. It was like I hate the thing. I hated it. And I was like, every time I did it, I'm like, this is the last time you're doing it. You're training someone else to do it. And I would do it month after month after month. It would bother me for 2 weeks going up to it. And then it would bother me for 2 weeks after it because it would be 2 weeks late. And I finally sat down. I trained my assistant how to do it. She tried it once. She had a few questions. She never asked me a question ever again. And then she told me the other day, oh my gosh, I love doing that expense report. It's so fun. And I was just like, I thought she was being sarcastic. I was like, yeah, tell me about it. She's like, no, I really mean it. I do like it. So the things that you don't like doing, there's people on your team that would love to do it and take more responsibility, because we think about, like, what do we get out of a job? Like our employees, they will get this place to go where they've got these great relationships with their other coworkers, but also it gives them a place to go to where they can be utilized for their gifts and also feel competent in doing something worthwhile. So if we're not providing training, if we're not giving our team autonomy to make decisions, we're just pretty much telling them just to follow A, B, C, D, D, and then just we're telling them what to do. They're not using their brains, and it's not engaging. And so if part of our practice is to keep people so we can grow, everything about this makes for a good practice and a good culture. And hence it gives you the freedom. And that's what we all want, is the freedom to do what we want to do.
The leading component that challenges the growth perspective of a practice is the owner's vision. Everything rises and follows on the philosophies and the values of the owner. If your vision broken down into operatories is to have 3 chairs versus 30 chairs, be open Monday through Thursday versus being open 6 or 7 days a week, offering hygiene services up to a certain number of hygienists, all of those components coming together are going to put a ceiling on the amount of your productivity. You know, there's 2 ways to increase your revenue. And they're the first 2 things that need to be addressed before you worry about collections and reimbursement rates. Number 1, it's either to increase annual patient visits or to increase the production per patient visit. So when we look at increasing annual patient visits, the doctors typically think about the work they're doing, the load on their shoulders. And it is tiring. Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of work to be the technician performing the dental services Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday, 4 days a week. Some doctors want to take their foot off the gas and work 3 days a week. That all works fine. But you've got to have a vision for how many chair hours you want for yourself. And if you're a general dentist, and we'll just speak in that context, since it's the largest portion of the available people, the professionals in the dental sector, think about how many hours you want to work. Think about how many operatories you want to have and how many hygienists you're going to have seeing the patients on a continuing care perspective. You know, way back in the early 90s when I started in dental consulting, it was because of one of my clients in our accounting firm had asked me to help him grow his practice. As a matter of fact, I just talked to him over this last weekend, and we've known each other over 50 years, actually, since school. But that being said, we came to the realization that even though we had 3,000 active patients, Kerry, he only had 1 hygienist. And right there was the governor or the ceiling, because 1 hygienist seeing 8 patients a day, 4 days a week, could see 32 appointments a week times 50 weeks a year, 1,600 appointments. And as he said to me over, 35 years ago, his average patient came 3 times a year. So you take that capacity of 1,600 appointments divided by 3 visits a year, the capacity is 533 patients. There's only so much dentistry they need on an ongoing basis. And so the doctors then look and say, well, the easiest thing I can change, since change is difficult, is what I'm doing. And they go learn about implants. They learned about all-on-X cases. They learned in the past about sleep apnea or ortho or doing endo, all the things that they could move the needle with to get some lift in productivity. All because in their vision, they knew they may or may not be earning enough money. When it comes down to the bottom line, you want a business model and grow to that model that makes sure you're having fun, you're feeling fulfilled, and you're appropriately financially rewarded. And when I talk about financially rewarded, how much they need to make to grow the business model too, Gary, take how much they need to spend on an annual basis to run their life. And that talks about day-to-day living expenses. It could talk about house payments, taxes, insurance for life insurance, disability, long-term care, educational debt, all the things they want to do for the kids. Bundle it all up into one amount. And let's just say that amount you want to spend is $200,000 a year. Triple it. That's the net you need to have from your business after the business's collections minus operating expenses minus debt service. Because out of that net of 600, you're going to put that 600 into 3 equal amounts, 3 buckets. Number one is your taxes. At that level, it's going to cost you about $200, $250 a year to run your business. Personal, federal, and state income taxes. You're going to spend $200,000 a year on yourself. And the last, you need to save for retirement. As I said, when we were talking, getting ready for this conversation, my oldest son is your age. I'm 25 years older. And so it's just a reality. You're going to be 68 before you know it, just as you're your age versus just the other day you were in high school. So life goes on so quickly that people begin preparing for it the day they become an employee in the workforce. Growing to that business model needs to be cast as a vision. And for some of the entrepreneurially oriented people that have that entrepreneur mindset who say, do I have enough patients? I have an abundance of patients. I need more providers than I can manage with myself and 2 or 3 or 4 hygienists. Then I want to bring on a second doctor and more hygiene team, a third doctor and more hygiene team. We call those core teams the care team. 1 doctor, 2 hygienists. That model today should easily push out around $1.4 million, $1.5 million with of revenue a year without any complex tweaking. When you look at that and you collect it, or 90% or more of it, then you should be able to hit that 600, 750 target. And that's just a vision of, that's an explanation of how we initially start with what do we need to grow to? And then the question becomes, how do we grow to?
I think people are so focused on linear, they sometimes forget about the exponential moves. But at the same time, you're also throwing in a mindset. And why I bring that is to say, how many times does mindset also play a role, whether be scarcity mindset and more of a sophisticated look at that, or it's just who people spend time with, or do they think they can get it, the capital or whatever it ends up being. So when I look at this marketplace, there's a lot of different things that are happening, but linear versus exponential, and how do you make the exponential moves happens with mindset. So going back on my original question, because I'll go down a path, but the original thing is I was on a plane. We were talking about this before we started. And I was thinking about where people get stuck. And I was thinking about the 5 kind of tiers, where people are growing. And the first thing I started saying was that percent that's still in that entrepreneurial illusion type phase, right? Which is, I'm not really an entrepreneur yet. I'd like to be an entrepreneur. I own a practice, but that's still a group. Whether that group is here in 10 years is a good question. But that group is still out there where you have to almost get them to the place where they become entrepreneurs. Then we get people to a place where they're scaling, where they've added some doctors, where they've added a location, where they've added those types of things. But the third one is where I see people get caught up the most, which is the operational point, where I still think so many practices, because most of our practices are groups or aspiring groups, and I still see people get caught up on the operational piece, which is that they want to grow. For instance, they're making linear moves, they're growing exponentially as well, but they get caught up on the operational piece. And you've probably talked about it a gazillion times on your podcast, but I'm still seeing a lot of people get stuck there.
So break that down in a way that I love where you're going, but break it down for a dentist who, when you talk about exponential growth and things like that, what does that mean? They're moving, they're growing. What is actually happening in their brain that's preventing them from growing from that point?
First part is be careful of not promoting people to their incompetence. And I still see so much promotion to incompetence. And that sounds so harsh, but it's just true that so many people are still trying to promote Susie to a position that she's not qualified for and trying to help her get there. But the doctor isn't really strong in operations either. So he's trying, or she's trying to coach somebody who's not strong in operations to become strong in operations. And the ceiling of this person, they've already hit their ceiling because they're not ready to do the position today.
Let me break that down for the doctors listening here in a different way. It would be like a new college grad student graduating from college, and then they are clinically in charge of teaching all of your dentists the clinical skills, but they aren't in a position to be able to do that. And that's a hard pill to swallow. Everybody understands that when I say it, but it's a hard pill to swallow when you're the one that's the leader that is weak in the area that you're trying to help them elevate.
It takes courage. And one of the things I tell people is if you're promoting someone to their incompetence and they're not going to be successful, you're not actually serving anybody. So it's interesting because you might think, well, that stuff just happens when you're at maybe 2 million or 3 million. I see it at 17 million, Gary. I still see it happening where organizations, their executive team, whatever that looks like, is getting stuck at a ceiling and they're not able to get past that. And they think that they're helping people out, but those people oftentimes in the long run hold the organization back. They get fired in the long run anyhow, or whatever ends up happening. So I do think that people get stuck at operational mastery and optimization, really optimizing things. And we can get in operations for 42 podcasts in a row if we wanted to, but keeping it just simple. I always tell people this: if you're in charge of the practice and you think to yourself, nothing gets done without me making sure it gets done, then you know you've outgrown your operations. It's that simple. If you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm the one who's got to make sure that happens. I'm the one who's got to make sure the doctors get hired. I'm the one who's got to find the new location. I'm the one who's got to make sure everyone's doing the KPIs and scorecards. I'm the one who's got to do that. If I'm the one who's got to think through all of those things, then I've outgrown my operations. That means I'm limited by my ability to then get and be in charge of every process getting done. And if I'm at that place, I know that I do not have the right operational team. And any entrepreneur who's ever been in a business ever has been at the place where they woke up and said, I'm doing it all. And I got to make sure everything happens. And so that's what I would say about the operational side is if it's all on you, you've outgrown your team.
Which is different, right, than big DSOs. Like those are all different categories. There's a lot of different categories now.
And emerging groups and private equity. I stand with the industry at large. So I have zero interest on either side. I just am only going to come with the facts. And there's sometimes when people say things like, say no to the DSO, to me, I feel like that is a very ignorant statement. And I say that with authority and strength because I know both sides. And I will tell you this, if you have seen one DSO, you've seen one DSO. If you didn't catch that, it's not, if you've seen them one, you've seen them all. It does not work like that. We work with over 55 different types of buyers, 55 different buyers rather. And many of them have so many different structures. Then it's not even funny. It's crazy. Some are dentist driven. Some give money up front, little, with an earnout. Some allow you to take shares in the company. Some you are actually keeping shares of your own dental practice. And there's just so many different variations of percentages. If you have seen one DSO, you have seen one DSO. And so I completely disagree a statement like putting blanket statements that DSOs are all bad. They're actually not.
Okay. And I agree with you. I agree that it's not possible for all DSOs to be bad, right? But that's not saying that story that I just told is false either, because that's probably happened before. But there's probably been people burnt selling to a single practice. So how do I, as somebody like me, let's pretend I'm a dentist and I'm completely ignorant of this process, which I am. I'm not a dentist, but I am ignorant of this process. How do I protect myself and get the best of all worlds?
Yeah. Well, number one, you hire an expert. So I own dental pitch brokerage. Okay. Myself and my colleagues are experts at this. And we have relationships with just over 55 buyers. So number one, you don't go in by yourself. You go in with a security guard or 10, right? And then number two, you say what you want in advance, right? If you say, I want my full practice purchase, I don't want to have any rollover equity, okay? Well, now you have eliminated we'll call it, I'm gonna say 25% of the opportunities. Now you're down to 75% of the opportunities. Then if you say, I want to have as much as my money as I can up front. Matter of fact, I need to have 80%. Okay. You have now eliminated another 25%. Somewhat, I don't want quoted on it, but from my knowledge, they're reasonable. They're not unreasonable percentages. Yeah. So it's not like published by ADSO or something like that. Yep. Yes, I can say that. I'm pretty confident behind those facts. So then you say, outside of that, you're like, okay, I want an opportunity where I can actually maintain 30% of my practice. I just want a growth partner. I want a JV partner, right? And so now you're like 25% left. So it's like all you have is 25%, right? And so then in each of those buckets, there's different variations of each type. And so I say all of that to say that there are so many different types of opportunities. And if you know what you want up front, it really can save you down the road, down the long haul. I also would say this. There are so many opportunities where a private practice dentist sells to some person coming out of school, or that was an associate that's getting their first practice. And it's a nightmare. It is a complete nightmare. And they don't know how to run a business, and they run their business into the ground, and they have terrible leadership skills. I mean, there's so many things. So it's all about finding the right partner in general and knowing exactly what you want. And also there's a lot of practices that build up to, let's just call it a practice that's a $2 million or $2.5, $3 million practice. And they're like, all right. And I actually seen this in a Facebook group recently. You get your $3 million practice and you're like, I want to sell to anybody but a DSO. Okay, good luck. How are you going to find somebody who is willing to pay that much money for your practice, and you want to leave your practice tomorrow? Very difficult.
If you've made it this far, it's because you listened to the whole thing. So thank you so much for tuning in. And again, I really value you and appreciate every single listener, every single view that we get. We have thousands of people tuning in every single week, and it means so much to us. And we hope that we're bringing you value. And if there's anything that we can do for you or any questions that you ever have, please feel free to reach out. And thank you so much for making Dental Marketing Theory one of the best marketing podcasts out there.